Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the birthday wishes yesterday. It is much appreciated. I got a really neat toy from my wife, and it's partially a soundboard and partially a macro keyboard, and it's very cool. I don't know if that sound is going to be heard, but it's super cool. Okay, I'm going to find out if it's heard when I re-listen to this. Okay, now into the news. Today's Canada Day, so happy birthday, Canada. And here is Toronto's gift to Canada. Breaking yesterday, mandatory masks or face coverings in enclosed public places has just been approved by Toronto City Council. Starts July 7th through the summer. Now, if you've been watching the death rate of this thing, it's been steadily declining. Maybe cases are going up, but the death rate of this thing is declining, and people, daily deaths are declining. I don't understand why we're doing this. And, well, from a public health perspective or for whatever perspective, it doesn't seem necessary. For other reasons, it seems like exactly what the leadership, the municipal leadership, the federal leadership, the provincial leadership. Now, Doug Ford didn't get behind this, but the health advisor said, one of the health advisors said that it didn't make sense in order to, it didn't make sense to make it provincial wide because then you make it mandatory in places where there's no COVID, and it doesn't make sense to do that. So the public health people aren't acknowledging how damaging wearing a mask is and how ineffective it is at preventing infection, either your spread of the infection or your ability to keep yourself safe. It's better to wash your hands than it is to be fiddling with a mask. And I know I said all the opposite things a little while ago, but it's amazing what time and research does, right? Like there is a reason to not wear the mask. And I mean, Tam was saying this as well in early March, and I was frustrated by that because at that point in time, it seemed one, this thing was much more deadly. We didn't have the data we've got now, and two, it seemed like masks were being widely adopted in China. And well, how often is Dr. Tam right? I mean, realistically. However, I've updated my standpoint, and you're free to do whatever you'd like. I think this is, if you were going to do mandatory masks, why do it in month 4 of this whole thing? Like, it doesn't make any sense at all when you look at the timeline, right? If this was implemented right at the beginning, if they said, oh my goodness, masks and stopping the flights from infected areas that were still landing today, I mean, nobody's paying attention to what's happening in Wuhan. Nobody's paying attention because it's not the second wave. It's not this big thing that they're wanting people to believe that it is. So it's interesting that this is the result of all of that, right? Months of lockdown, 2 weeks to kill this virus. Patty Haydu said that months ago, and people, it's not like people have been out, except for those protests and things. Here's the hypocrisy. And this is Tom Quiggin highlighting a Spencer Fernando piece, and we're going to look at the Spencer Fernando piece in just a second. But Tom Quiggin says, disgusting and anti-Canadian. After allowing protests in June, City of Calgary says Canada Day events will be shut down. And he's quoting Spencer Fernando here, so we'll look at the whole thing. Here's Spencer Fernando's stuff. It says, absolute garbage. Every time you think hypocrisy has finally reached its highest level, it gets even worse. The City of Calgary, which allowed a huge Black Lives Matter protest earlier this month, is now saying that Canada Day events are not permitted. They are even saying that they will shut down those events even though they will be held outside. We've heard rumors of large events being planned in parks for Canada Day. This is not permitted, and these events will be shut down if they try to go forward. People are not allowed to gather for Canada Day, but they're allowed to gather for Black Lives Matter. Here's and this is the City of Calgary tweet, right? It says, this is, back to Spencer Fernando, this is disgusting, it's anti-patriotic, it's anti-Canadian, it's total disloyalty, and it's hypocritical to the extreme. How the heck can mass protests be safe while Canada Day gatherings in parks, where the experts say the risk of transmission is far lower, not be safe? Science isn't supposed to change based on political circumstances. No, it's certainly not. And here's the City of Guelph talking about the Black Lives Matter protest. I think that it's weird. They didn't issue guidelines for the anti-lockdown protest. They weren't saying we support your right to protest with the anti-lockdown protest. But with this one, they say, quote, Guelph is preparing for peaceful demonstrations on Saturday to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Guelph City Hall and Market Square washrooms will be closed. Please follow public health guidelines. Oh, to reduce the risk of public infection, you'll close the washrooms? Public urination is so wonderful. Here's what the City of Guelph did for a person who dared to speak out against this. It says a statement from the city of Guelph disparaging comments about Saturday's Black Lives Matter peaceful protest. Here it is. And it says, earlier today, the City of Guelph administration learned that a city employee used a popular online platform to criticize and disparage Saturday's peaceful protest to raise awareness of anti-Black racism and its participants. If you dare to speak out and say this is hypocritical, to say these gatherings are okay and these gatherings aren't, then you will be punished by your employers if you're employers of the City of Guelph. Back to this. The employee has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation by the City of Guelph. I haven't heard an update on this. I hope he's back, and I hope he's been paid for everything that any time he's lost, because this is not okay. You can't do this. Back to this. The employee's comments do not reflect the City of Guelph values. As an employer and community partner, the City of Guelph believes strongly in an inclusive culture of respect and collaboration. We also understand that we have a responsibility, and as an employer and as a public organization, to break the cycle of racism and in our community, our country, and the world. What horseshit. Excuse my French. Seriously. They say this, but they don't mean it. And they don't mean it because they're only talking about one type of racism. And I can prove that definitively. Upper Grand District School Board, we've got a conversation coming up. Back to this. Here's Guelph talking about Canada Day. So Black Lives Matter, we're preparing for a demonstration. Canada Day, let's celebrate Canada Day safely. No backyard fires. Get fireworks tips here. Stay 2 meters apart from people outside your household, social circle. Also, you're not allowed to set off fireworks in city parks. Pass it on, please. And they're pushing the stay home for Canada Day. Now, they're not saying that we will shut down Canada Day celebrations, but it is a slippery slope. I mean, are people going to go when are people going to even put the effort in to get something together? And I think that's the point of these kind of tweets, right? Like, it's not even worth your time because it'll just get shut down and you'll get fined and blah 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 blah. Just, disobeying an emergency order. And I don't think that's appropriate if you allow Black Lives Matter people to choose their level of risk, but you refuse to allow people who want to patriotically celebrate the birthday of the country. If you threaten them with fines, that's inappropriate. And the reason it's inappropriate is we either have freedom or we don't, right? Like, you can't selectively enforce public orders. This one we agree with, this protest we agree with, so you guys can protest. But this one we don't agree with. We don't agree with Canada Day, so we are going to fine you if you get together, right? Call it a protest and they can't fine you? I don't know. I'm not sure what the solution to this is, but it's hypocritical, and the people in charge don't care. That's the fundamental point here. That's the thing I'm trying to underline. They know they're being hypocritical. They don't care. They'll look at you and say, what do you mean, racist? Happy Canada Day, right? Really. I wish I was being tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic there, but I'm really not. This is the response at this point in time. This is the world we live in. Here's an interesting thing. So there's a rally today. Mark Friesen's doing the United We Roll thing again, and there's people speaking today on Parliament Hill, and I wish them all the best. I'm concerned that Antifa will show up, and I hope that it all goes off without a hitch. Not for Antifa, for the people who are protesting and trying to spread their message. The whole purpose of Antifa is to shut that down, just in case you're not sure. But there's another thing going on today, and Mr. Norman Traversy, and I haven't really spoken about him before, he got a lot further than I thought he did when I looked into this, and I've seen interviews with him, and I've reached out to see if he wants to interview with me on either Speaking Moistly or on here. I'll use the same format though. Well, basically what happened is there are laws that Mr. Traversy accessed and got a court date against Justin Trudeau. And you can see a much more detailed interaction, or a much more detailed explanation of what I'm talking about if you go to the YouTube video here. He's doing a lot of interviews recently. Anyway, the ultimately got shut down, and this was before the 2019 election. But he got shut down in the courts, and he's refiled, but the USMCA comes into effect today. And in the USMCA, there are strict rules against corruption. And if there is corruption present in a government, the other two governments, so in this case Mexico and United States, would need to investigate. So Mr. Traversy is going to give the contents of his lawsuit against Justin Trudeau, which is basically obstruction of justice in the SNC-Lavalin case, to the United States and to Mexico, and say, under the USMCA agreement that was signed by Canada, the United States, and Mexico, you have to investigate this allegation, blah, blah, blah. And so he's expecting something to happen. I think that legally he's on even ground, but I think that the courts are usurped by leftist judges through years of leftist governments, from Dalton McGuinty to Kathleen Wynne and before, and that's just Ontario. There's many examples across the country. I think that we will have a very difficult time moving forward if the entire government of Canada is corrupted in the way that it looks to be corrupted. And what do I mean by that? I'll get to that in just a minute. We Charity co-founder says, PMO called to award $900 million student grant program. So do I think that there's going to be headway made on this? Maybe if you bring in a government that is not corrupt, and that might be the Trump administration. That might even be the Mexican administration. And I don't know the name of the current Mexican president. I apologize. But if those governments are not corrupt or not connected to the corrupt governments in Canada, then maybe we'll have a chance at a fair trial. But I don't think that this is the end of Mr. Trudeau's resources. I don't think that this is the end of his ability to shut down. He shut down democracy effectively. Like, Parliament sitting a couple of more times this summer, right? And then into September, they control the calendar. When will we get a budget? When will we even get a fiscal update? Like, you see how already the usurpation of the government is in full swing, and the numbers for this. I mean, Vancouver, how many people died in Vancouver? The number of deaths in Vancouver far outstripped the number of deaths of COVID-19 countrywide, and yet we're still in lockdown. Why? Right? It's maybe not about this virus. So again, I say, okay, I'm going to read this. I'm very interested in the July 1st, 2020, when the USMCA takes effect. There is a man, Norman Traversy, who's filed a private prosecution against Trudeau, which has been obstructed by the Canadian justice system. There are anti-corruption measures in the USMCA obligating parties to investigate allegations of corruption. Traversy is bringing his case to the U.S. Embassy along with an estimated 5,000 people on July 1st. They are aware and are looking forward to receiving it, according to Traversy. So, I mean, I hope that this is a bombshell. I hope that this is something that is that at least gets its day in court. I don't know how to give the opposition a backbone. I don't know how to make sure that Justin Trudeau has a hard time with getting the NDP and the Bloc to agree to let him spend money carte blanche like this in a way that is damaging to Canadian taxpayers. Since when do volunteers get paid? I thought volunteer work was very different, especially when you're undercutting the minimum wage. Oh yeah, I could use some volunteers to do outreach and stuff. I mean, like, what is that? What does volunteer work even mean if you are undercutting the minimum wage, right? So, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to play out, but I wish Mr. Traversy all the luck in the world. If he wants to come on and chat with me, that would be wonderful. If you know him, let him know I'm interested in talking to him, and I wish him luck. And well, I mean, okay, let's look at the money here. Let's look at the money, because when I talk about corruption, I'm not talking about some fictional evil Justin Trudeau who's twiddling his beard. I don't know, whatever, right? In a weird evil supervillain kind of way. That's not what I'm implying. I'm implying real corruption, real cronyism, real. We're going to send you this kind of money, no bid contracts, just under the limit, just because what? And this is a far left-leaning organization, that's very interested in going even further left than Justin Trudeau has. It's interesting. So we're going to read the news post on this, and then we're going to read a Rex Murphy opinion piece, and that'll bring us to the end of the show today. Here we go. National Post is reporting on June 30th. Today is July 1st, Canada Day. We Charity co-founder said PMO, Prime Minister's Office, called to award $900 million student grant program, contradicting Trudeau. A co-founder of We Charity claimed in a June 12th conference call that the Prime Minister's Office contacted the organization directly in April to help implement a federal student volunteer grant program worth over $900 million. We Charity is set to collect at least $19.5 $1.5 million in fees to administer the program, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has faced questions over his and his family's close ties to We Charity and how the contract was awarded. Trudeau has maintained that the contract was handled by government bureaucrats, but in a recording of a video conference with various Canadian youth organizations obtained by the National Post, We Charity co-founder Mark Kielburger told attendees that his organization was asked directly by the Prime Minister's office to help implement the new Canadian Student Services Grant, the day after it was first announced on April 22nd. When asked about the comment, Tuesday, We Charity told National Post that Kielburger, quote, misspoke and was never in contact with the PMO regarding the grant program. On Tuesday, the PMO denied asking We Charity to administer the CSSG. So myself and my team, had all watched this April 22nd announcement, and the next day the Prime Minister's office kindly called us and said, quote, you know that announcement we just made? Would you be interested in helping us actually implement it? Kielburger told participants on the June 12th video conference, in which he reached out to community organizations to get involved in the student grant program. So after much consideration, we put up our hand and said, of course we're happy to be of assistance. This is really important at an important time. He continued in the conference call recorded by a participant on the call, whom the Post is granting anonymity due to the participant's fear of retribution. On Tuesday, when contacted by National Post, Kielburger retracted the account he provided on the call. Speaking loosely and enthusiastically, I incorrectly referred to the Prime Minister's office. In fact, the outreach came from unelected officials at Employment and Social Development Canada. To be specific, contact came to We Charity the week of April 26th from a senior assistant deputy minister, Skills and Employment Branch at Employment and Social Development Canada, and various additional members of ESDC staff. In fact, all discussions came at the instigation of departmental officials, and they led discussions with respect to contract and program parameters, Kielburger said in an emailed statement to the Post. The We Charity co-founder's initial statement had further raised concerns about those who have questioned the PMO's involvement in the decision to outsource the $912 million student grant program to We Charity, with whom Trudeau, his wife, and his mother have had close ties for years. When I'm listening to We Charity speak on this, it sounds to me that they're really playing up their personal connections to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister needs to explain how those connections work, because it certainly sounds from what We Charity was telling their inner circle is that they were called directly, they had the inside track. It was all golden for them, said NDP ethics critic Charlie Angus. Duff Conchar, of the accountability watchdog group Democracy Watch, said he thinks We Charity's explanation that Kielburger accidentally misspoke is not plausible. Quote, it's totally different to have a Prime Minister's office call you as opposed to someone in the bureaucracy, Conchar said. I just don't believe that he would be confusing that, because they've received grants and contracts from the government departments. So they know the difference between the government department and the Prime Minister's office. You know what's interesting though? You don't, and I don't, right? But most of the time, you would imagine Prime Minister's office has a different protocol for calling than just a minister. A minister would call you directly, right? Hi, I'm looking for this information. Other ones are, please hold for blah, right? I don't know. I'm just speculating. I've never been called by the Prime Minister's office. Back to this. Since last week, Justin Trudeau has repeated that the public service, not his office, has determined that We Charity was the only organization capable of administering the program. He has not clarified if the determination was made before or after the April 22nd press conference, but transcripts of his announcement, as well as the ministerial briefing an hour later, show no record of We Charity's involvement in the CSSG grants program. In fact, the first time the government mentions that the CSSG will be administered by We Charity is in a briefing document provided to the media on June 25th, 2 months after the initial announcement and 2 weeks after Kielburger told other charitable leaders on the video conference that his We Charity organization had been selected to run the program. Trudeau had defended the exclusive CSSG contract awarded by claiming the government bureaucrats had determined We Charity was the only feasible option. Quote, we needed to have a partner to help establish the networks and to deliver that with all the partners across the country. And as the public service dug into it, they came back with only one organization that was capable of networking and organizing and delivering this program on the scale that we needed, and it was the We program, Trudeau told program reporters, during the press conference last Friday. The We Charities are evaluated by our public service as being the best and only organization able to deliver on this scale, and we need to make sure that young people have service opportunities this summer, he repeated on Monday. Scrolling down, hearing that the Prime Minister's office personally offered a charity with close ties to Justin Trudeau, Sophie Gregory Trudeau, and the Liberal Party a $900 million sole source contract is extremely concerning, to say the least, and absolutely needs to be investigated, commented Michael Barrett, the Conservative ethics critic. In the call with community groups, Kielburger later explained that the CSSG remains a government initiative that We Charity is only helping to implement, calling it a white label solution. In marketing terms, a white label generally refers to an unlabeled product or service produced by one organization that is then relabeled by another organization to make it appear as a product of the second organization. Kielburger's explanation did not clarify whether he meant the white label was for the federal government or for the We Charity. So, is We white labeling the government's grant and then repackaging it to make it palatable? Or is We Charity the white label and then they'll repackage it, or somebody else will repackage what they're selling? So they just get a take? Who knows? The National Post reported earlier this week that We Charity had received a series of exclusively sole-sourced contracts worth a total of $120,000 from the federal government over the last 3 years, according to a database of government contracts. 4 of the 5 contracts have been in the last 15 months, with the most recent and largest until now at $40,000, dated January 2020. Aside from contracts, We Charity also received nearly $5.2 million in grants and contributions from various federal departments under the Trudeau government starting in 2017, 5 times the amounts of grants and contributions it received from the federal government between 2012 and 2016 under another name, Kids Can Free the Children. Yep. So that's a lot of money, $5 million plus $120,000, right? Where's it all going? What do we get for that money? Right? We get grants and flashy conferences at schools? I don't know, pushing liberal ideologies. Okay, here's Rex Murphy to finish this out. Sorry, this is longer than I thought. Oh well. Rex Murphy, there's nothing charitable about circumventing Parliament. This generation, the We generation, is the one that will disrupt the status quo and shake the foundations of patriarchy. Keynote speaker at the 2017 We Day United Nations. We haven't got a House of Commons. We haven't got a financial update. Our cottage life Prime Minister, all on his every morning lonesome, has for the past 50 days or so opened the fire hose on public spending, setting off a Niagara-level flow of billions upon billions of dollars. In the words of Winston Churchill, or someone who sounds a lot like him, never has so much loot been thrown out the window by so few to so many. Bill Morneau, nominally the Minister of Finance, didn't even show up under the tent of Commons while Mr. Trudeau shoveled out the millions. Canada's Auditor General, definitely the most overworked, under-resourced human being in all of Canada, cannot begin to even keep up with the spending, never mind do a proper accounting of it. Remember yesterday, I was telling you that somebody get him a laptop and Google Docs. They're working in DOS. Don't get them Google Docs. Well, it's just counting. I mean, we can just put the receipts in there, right? We'll know. Okay, back to this. The AG has asked for more resources and a larger budget. Both were refused. His office may be the only major institution in Trudeau's Canada that has not been drowned in grants, giveaways, or subsidies. Last week, the cottage life government pulled out all the stops. Trudeau announced $900 million for what he called a student aid program. The government has said that the money will go towards students' fall tuitions, although the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion has said that the Canada Student Services Grant can be used for any expenses. The big part of the announcement, however, was that the future revelation that this close to $1 billion program will be administered not by loyal and dutiful members of Canada's civil services with its thousands of members, but by We Charity, one of the many arms of Craig and Mark Kielburger organization, perhaps best known for its razzmatazz We Day broadcasts. Trudeau has been a prime speaker at We Day. Sophie Gregory Trudeau, the PM's wife, has also. In fact, in a point of sad irony, it was during a We Day of gathering in London, England, which she attended along with Margaret Trudeau, the PM's mother, that she contracted COVID-19. We Days, and they have many, have the air of old religious revivalist meetings, only with the progressive dogmas in place of old school fundamentalism. And they are only for the young. Me to we is their slogan. After last week for the Kielburgers, it's we to we. A private non-governmental organization has been handed the right to pass out $900 million to young people who volunteer. This is historical, for up until Thursday, through all of time, the key definition of volunteer was was someone who did good deeds for the sake of the deeds and declined any form of compensation. Trudeau has inaugurated a new vision for volunteers. Volunteer and we will pay you. Gone is that stuffy, fluffy, so un-2015 notion of serving the public out of civil good, will, and social conscience. The wee bunch are all about youth and every progressive and hyper-liberal, small L, piety you can imagine. They are as green as the Greens. They are more feminist than Mr. Trudeau. They are, see above, going to shake the foundations of the patriarchy. We's leaders are two men. Should I mention that they're white? That seems obligatory these days. They are against everything bad and for everything that is good, which aligns very much with Trudeau Liberals Party's view of itself. Yeah, bad is bad, and we're good. Don't pay any attention to the actual human feces being discharged into fish habitats. We're for the environment. Back to the article. Some might see Trudeau's past patronage and attendance at Wee Days as perhaps showing too close an alignment for him. Might see his passage over of such a fat and vague program to the Wee Boys as unseemly, when it's noted that his wife is very close to Wee and that Margaret Trudeau has also graced their platforms. This impression grows even stronger. There's also uncomfortable consideration that once again the Auditor General, the most overworked human being in all of Canada, will not have the capacity now or later to look into, scrutinize, and assess the distribution of 900 million of Canada's taxpayer dollars money. Trudeau said he did not pick the Kielburgers. He said the civil service did. How do we know? How likely is that? Can we see the memo? Was anyone else asked? Have the Kielburgers ever contributed to liberal campaigns to the Prime Minister and his campaigns? Are we allowed to ask? Some people are calling this a blatant conflict of interest. It isn't. It's a blatant consonance of interests. Trudeau's strongest appeal is to young people. We Charity and its many arms deal exclusively with young people and promote an agenda that could serve as a Trudeau Liberal Party platform. Finally, Parliament is dead. Public speaking is now an arbitrary function of the Prime Minister, aided by the artful, unelected advisors in the PMO. This is sad. Sad for Canadian democracy. Sad for the next generation who will be paying for deficits when they are as old, but not as useless as me. Happy Canada Day. P.S. Halifax Chronicle Herald and St. John's Telegram should be ashamed of themselves for the top-of-the-page, cringeworthy, woke note to readers on the Canadian flag in their weekend papers. I agree wholeheartedly. What an insult to Canadians. And well-written, Rex. Thank you very much, sir. I think that that's poignant and on point. I think that there are questions. There are very, very good questions. Are we allowed to ask them, or will we be silenced like Rebel and True North and Andrew Lawton, depersoned and deplatformed for daring to question the leaders who are shoveling money, like going down a runaway railway track, and they just can't get it out the door fast enough. And luckily, they told their friends to get there to collect it, right? $900 million? For what exactly? What exactly? Why could we not open the economy and then they could work and make more money than volunteering? What does volunteering mean to a liberal these days? Okay, that's enough for me. Happy Canada Day, everyone. Thanks for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. I took the afternoon off yesterday, and Greg was on his way to the rolling protests up in Ottawa. So, like I said, best of luck, guys. I hope that it goes off well, and I hope that there's no issues. I hope that there's no anti-protests or counter-protests or whatever. I hope it just goes off well. And yes, thanks for watching. I've said all the other stuff. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.